the Syrian government forces are not shelling the village, number one. No, the Syrian, I told him this yesterday. I told him this, I was in his office yesterday. And I told him this, the Syrian government is not shelling the village. If you double check and triple check, you would see that the shelling is targeting the suburbs of the villages, where the armed groups are concentrated.
But the armed groups are holding these peacekeepers, so
Yeah.
that's maybe also where the peacekeepers are.
No, we know for sure what we are doing, and we know where the peacekeepers are, and we know what we are doing. The Syrian government commitment and task and the duties is to rescue the peacekeepers, to safeguard their lives, to bring them safe back to their headquarters. All this is an integral part of our mission. And this is why we are even sacrificing the lives of our own soldiers in order to bring these peacekeepers back safe to their headquarters. We are paying a huge price for their safety. The Syrian government forces is not targeting the villages. The inhabitants of these villages are Syrians, citizens, like anybody else, and they are part of our sovereignty, and they are part of our government's duty to protect them by all means. The Syrian government forces are doing exactly what they have to do in order to, number one, bring back safely the peacekeepers, guarantee the safety and security of the inhabitants of these villages. 3, get these armed groups, terrorists, out of the area. Yes.
I wanted to ask about a letter that Syria turned in earlier in the week to the Security Council and the Secretary General, apparently about the ship that came from Libya and statements in the Turkish Parliament. Could you say what the letter is and what the response has been so far?
I addressed 2 letters, actually, in the same day, yesterday, to the Security Council members as well as to the Secretary General. The 2 letters, the first one is about the acceleration and escalation by the Turkish government's infiltration and intervention in our domestic affairs by supplying weapons to the terrorist groups through the border in a blatant violation of international law principles, as well as of the neighborhood conventions regulating the bilateral relations between the 2 countries. The Turkish government is facilitating all tasks of acts aiming to destabilize the country, I mean Syria. The Turkish government is encouraging stealing the Syrian plants in Aleppo. 1,500 industrial plants were stolen so far from Aleppo and shipped into Turkey. The Turkish government, as you know, is facilitating the delivery of weapons to these armed groups coming from Qatar, from Saudi Arabia, from Libya, and from elsewhere. Now it has become public that the American administration is promising $60 million also of so-called non-lethal assistance. Britain did the same. So here we have a clear-cut picture of what's going on. We drew the attention of the Security Council to assume its responsibility in preventing the escalation in the area and in making the necessary pressure on the Turkish government to return the stolen, precious stuff taken away from the city of Aleppo. And to, of course, also exert the necessary pressure so that the Turkish government would stop its help and assistance to the terrorists and armed groups operating in the northern part of Syria. The second letter was about the attack and the demolition of the Umayyad Mosque in Aleppo and the destruction of the very important masterpieces of old books and archives contained in the library and next to the mosque. 750,000 rare books were stolen from this library and shipped to Turkey. Part of the library was burned. Part of these books is lost forever, unfortunately. The other part is shipped also into Turkey. These armed groups, as you know, recently perpetrated an appalling act when they cut the head of al-Ma'arri's statue in Aleppo. And al-Ma'arri, by the way, is the great Islamic philosopher ever in the history of the Islamic civilization. Al-Ma'arri was a secular philosopher in the 10th century, gentlemen. So these terrorist groups, claiming that they act on behalf of their Islamic ideology and Islam has nothing to do with them, found very suitable to cut the head of this, the statue of this very important philosopher in order to show to terrorize the inhabitants of the area and to show that they don't believe in any secular thoughts, even though this gentleman lived in Ma'arrat al-Nu'man 10 centuries ago. By the way, just for your kind information, that gentleman wrote a very famous book entitled Rasail al-Ghufran, which means the pardon letters. He was blind, by the way. 600 years later, this book was adopted by Dante in Italy when he wrote his Divine Comedy. So we are talking about a real philosopher and a real gentleman. The armed terrorist groups wouldn't pardon this man even 10 centuries after his death. So they went straight ahead to his grave and cut the head of his statue. The same guys would like to destroy the pyramids in Egypt. The same guys and the same school of thoughts shot this innocent girl from Pakistan, Malala Yousaf. The same guys destroyed the statues in Bamiyan in Afghanistan. The same guys perpetrated 9/11, etc., etc., etc. So here we are facing the same kind of challenge, represented by ignorance, daring speaking on behalf of Islam.
Can you confirm that your vehicles have entered the town with the rest of the peacekeepers that attacked throughout the shelling?
I have no information. Thank you very much.